step in and help more in terms of compensation, that sort of thing. So anyway, fiscal policy could shift, and if it does, the curve shifts. If there's an increase in government spending, the curve shifts to the right. If there's a decrease in government spending, aggregate demand will shift to the left. Net exports, what would cause that to change? Well, net exports is two things. It's exports and it's imports, X and M. X and X. X and M, exports, imports. We don't actually, it's X and M, and neither one of those words starts with an X or an M. But anyway, what would cause net exports to rise? Well, net exports would go up if our exports to other countries, our sales to other countries rise, or if our imports from other countries goes down. Either one of those would cause an increase in net exports. So what could cause this to happen, an increase in our exports? How about this possibility? Foreign incomes rise. Think how that would work out. If people in Japan and Europe and so forth, if they're becoming better off and better off, their incomes are going up, then they start saying, gosh, I'm feeling pretty well off here. I'm not real scared about losing my job or whatever. I think I'm going to buy some things. And when they say, I think I'm going to buy some things, part of what they buy is they buy goods from the United States. And so our exports will go up when the rest of the world gets richer. So we want the rest of the world to be richer. We want them to be richer so they can buy more from us. If foreign incomes would fall, then our exports to the foreigners would go down. Okay. Another thing that would influence, let me do this one with respect to imports. What would cause imports to go down where we don't buy as many foreign goods? How about if something like this happens? The dollar depreciates relative to other currencies. I was going to have to write those last words on the chalk tray there. If the dollar depreciates, and by the way, another way of saying this is that the foreign currencies appreciate. Their value goes up relative to the dollar's value goes down, it depreciates. Those are the terms for rising and falling value of a currency relative to other currencies. Appreciate and depreciate. And these things mean the same. Let me put like an equal sign here. This is just two different ways of saying the same. Okay, so if the dollar depreciates relative to other currencies, let's take an example. I want to buy a Japanese car, a Toyota, and maybe it costs $20,000 or an equivalent number of yen. Okay, if the dollar depreciates in value, that means that now, for me to buy that Japanese car, if I'm going to pay the same number of yen, I have to get more dollars to get the same number of yen to buy that car. And since I have to pay more dollars, to me that looks like a price increase for cars, and then I'm less likely to buy the car. So when there's a change in the value of the dollar, then foreign goods become more or less expensive. If the value of the dollar goes down, or if the value of the foreign currency goes up, then those foreign goods become more expensive. I'm less likely to buy them, and I'm less likely to import. Or you too. And the same idea. Now we could reverse this. We would have more imports. We would buy more from foreigners if the dollar got stronger, because all of a sudden we'd say, oh, those foreign goods, those are so cheap, because if the dollar gets 10% stronger, the price of foreign goods becomes 10% cheaper to those of us who are spending dollars. Okay. So anyway, a change, and by the way, I could have put the foreign incomes and the dollar depreciation. I could have put both of these for, on both imports and exports. But the point is that foreign incomes and the value of the dollar relative to other currencies, that shifts this curve. Boy, there's really kind of a lot of things that shift those aggregate demand and aggregate supply. How about this one? I'm going to put this change in the money supply. Would that shift that curve? And the answer is yes, it would. But the change in the money supply does not show up down here. I'll put an X through that because it does not show. There's nothing down here that says total expenditures include money supply. here's what happens. If there's a change in the money supply, then it affects mainly the C and mainly the I, but if there's a change in the money supply, it affects these other things that are components of total expenditures. So if there's an increase in the money supply, then there'll be an increase in consumption spending and an increase in investment spending. And so yes, a change in the money supply or monetary policy, that can cause these curves to shift. If there's a decrease in the money supply, and we'll come back later in the semester and talk about how this operates. If there's a decrease in the money supply, then consumption and investment spending go down, and this aggregate demand curve shifts to the left. Okay, so anyway, someday somebody's going to give you a test and they'll say, what causes the aggregate demand curve to shift? And then maybe there'll be 4 or 5 choices under there, A, B, C, D, E, and you want to start looking for some of this stuff. And if you don't see it, then say none of the above. But if you do see it, then that's when you need to put on your thinking cap and sort of go back in here and say, now what did we say about that? And there's our list. So we'll come back with this later on, because later on I'm just going to start shifting that aggregate demand curve, and you're supposed to have it in mind that the aggregate demand curve shifts because total expenditures change, and total expenditures change, these things change, because there is something underlying that total expenditure. There's something that underlies just this. You know, consumption spending doesn't change by itself. It changes because something happens. And so that's what you need to do. Let's go on to the next topic, and that is aggregate supply. I'll switch my axes. Well, I'm not switching the axes, but my labels I'll change. This time I'll put the Q there rather than the RGD